The first time I realized I was in love with Cyrus, nothing dramatic happened. There was no kiss, no confession, no moment when the world suddenly stopped. He was simply sitting across from me in a nearly empty cafe, laughing because I had accidentally put salt in my coffee instead of sugar. I had been tired that morning, distracted, half asleep. Cyrus took one sip of his coffee, frowned, and immediately pushed the cup away. "You know," he said, staring at me, "most people put sugar in coffee." I looked at my cup, then at him. "That explains a lot." He burst out laughing. I should have laughed too. Instead, I watched him. The way his eyes narrowed when he laughed. The way his shoulders shook. The way he leaned back in his chair like he didn't have a single problem in the world. And something inside me quietly changed. I didn't understand it at first. Cyrus was my best friend. That's all he was supposed to be. We had been friends for years. We'd survived terrible roommates, failed exams, family arguments, broken relationships, bad jobs, and too many nights eating cheap food because neither of us had enough money. He knew everything about me. And I knew everything about him. He knew that I couldn't sleep if my room was completely silent. He knew I hated being around people when I was upset. He knew that whenever I said, "I'm fine," I usually wasn't. And I knew Cyrus better than almost anyone. I knew that he became quiet when something bothered him. I knew he rubbed the back of his neck when he was nervous. I knew he hated asking anyone for help. And I knew that when he genuinely cared about someone, he became fiercely protective. I'd seen it happen countless times. Especially with me. Once, a stranger at a party had started arguing with me. Before I could even respond, Cyrus had stepped between us. "Back off." The man laughed. Cyrus didn't. I'd never seen him look that serious. Later, when we were walking home, I teased him about it. "You looked like you were about to fight him." I was. "You're ridiculous." He glanced at me. "Maybe." Then he bumped his shoulder against mine. "You're my friend. I'm not going to let some idiot mess with you." At the time I smiled. Now, years later, I realized how dangerous those little moments had been. Because I had started collecting them. Every smile. Every touch. Every late-night conversation. Every hug that lasted 1 second longer than it needed to. And eventually, I stopped seeing them as ordinary. The worst part was that Cyrus had always been very clear about who he was attracted to. Women. Only women. He dated women. Talked about women. Occasionally complained to me about women. Once, after a breakup, he had spent an entire night on my couch telling me how complicated dating was. "I don't understand it," he'd said. "You never understand anything." He laughed. Then he looked at me. "At least I know what I want." I remember nodding. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. Later, those words would echo in my head. Because I knew what I wanted too. And it was him. I just wasn't allowed to say it. Not without risking everything. So I hid it. I became very good at hiding it. When Cyrus talked about a woman he liked, I listened. When he showed me a picture, I smiled. When he went on dates, I told him to have fun. When he came back disappointed, I comforted him. And every time, I swallowed whatever jealousy rose inside me. I convinced myself that friendship was enough. That being near him was better than not having him at all. That one day the feelings would disappear. They never did. If anything, they grew stronger. Sometimes I wondered whether Cyrus noticed the little things. The way I always remembered what he liked to eat. The way I waited for him even when he told me not to. The way I knew when he was upset before he said a word. But I never let myself wonder for too long. Because the answer frightened me. If he knew, everything could change. What if he looked at me differently? What if he became uncomfortable around me? What if he pulled away? What if I lost my best friend? That last possibility always stopped me. I could survive loving him silently. I didn't think I could survive losing him completely. Then, one ordinary afternoon, Cyrus called me. "Otis." His voice was serious. I sat up. "What happened?" "Nothing happened." "That doesn't sound like nothing." He laughed quietly. "I need to tell you something." "Okay." There was a pause. "My family called." I waited. "You remember the farm? Your family's farm?" "Yeah." "The place where you grew up?" "That's the one." "What about it?" He sighed. "The farm is going to be mostly empty for the next few months." I frowned. "What happened?" "My parents have to leave town for a while. My brother's going with them. So someone has to stay." I immediately understood. "You." "Unfortunately." I laughed. "You're going back to the farm?" "Looks like it." "How long?" "Several months." I stared at the wall. Several months. Away from everything. Away from me. For some reason, the thought bothered me more than it should have. Then Cyrus said something that made my heart stop. Come with me. I laughed because I thought he was joking. Very funny. I'm serious. What? I can't manage the whole place alone. He explained that there would be animals to take care of, equipment to maintain, fields to inspect, supplies to organize, and countless small jobs that his family usually handled together. I need help. I hesitated. You want me to work on a farm? I want you to help me survive the farm. I laughed. You're going to regret asking. Probably. You hate waking up early. I know. You hate getting dirty. I know. You once complained for 20 minutes because there was mud on your shoes. That was different. How? It was expensive mud. I laughed so hard that I had to cover my face. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then Cyrus said quietly, "Come with me, Otis." I stopped laughing. There was something about his voice. Something honest. Something trusting. You really want me there? Of course. I looked down. My heart was already answering for me. Yes. There was a brief silence. Then Cyrus laughed. Good. Good? Yeah. He sounded relieved. I was hoping you'd say yes. I smiled. Why? Because the idea of doing all that alone sounds terrible. That sounds more like you. He laughed. Pack your bags. When? Tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yep. I looked around my apartment. Everything was suddenly moving too fast. But beneath the excitement was something else. Something I didn't want to admit. I was going to spend several months alone with the man I had secretly loved for years. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. The farm might have been waiting for Cyrus. But I was about to walk straight into the most dangerous few months of my life. Because I had spent years teaching myself not to fall any deeper. And now I was about to live under the same roof as him. The next morning I woke before my alarm. For a few seconds I forgot where I was. Then I heard the sound of birds outside the window, followed by the distant lowing of cattle, and everything came back to me. The farm. Cyrus. Months together. I stared at the ceiling. This was either going to be the best decision of my life, or the worst. I got out of bed, pulled on a pair of old jeans and walked downstairs. Cyrus was already in the kitchen. Of course he was. He stood by the counter with a mug in his hand, his hair still messy from sleep. He looked over when he heard me. Morning. Morning. You sleep? Barely. He smiled. Same. I looked at him suspiciously. Why? He shrugged. Too much on my mind. I wondered if he was thinking about me. I immediately forced that thought away. What's first? He pointed toward the door. Everything. I groaned. He laughed. Come on. Our first morning was chaos. The animals needed feeding. The water lines had to be checked. One of the fences near the western field had come loose. There was equipment that needed inspecting and a list of supplies Cyrus's father had left on the kitchen counter. By 8 in the morning I was covered in dust. By 9 I was regretting every decision that had brought me there. At some point Cyrus found me leaning against the barn. You okay? I looked at him. No. He laughed. You've been here 3 hours. Exactly. You'll get used to it. I doubt that. He stepped closer and handed me a bottle of water. Drink. I took it. Bossy. Someone has to keep you alive. I smiled. You always say things like that. Like what? Like I'm your responsibility. He looked at me for a second longer than necessary. Maybe you are. My heart skipped. I looked away. Come on, I muttered. We spent the rest of the morning working together. It surprised me how quickly we settled into a rhythm. Cyrus would start something and I somehow knew what he needed next. If he reached for a tool, I'd already be holding it. If I struggled with something, he'd notice before I asked for help. It had always been like this between us. But on the farm there was no noise around us to hide behind. Every little moment felt bigger. That afternoon we were repairing a section of fence. I climbed onto a small wooden platform to reach the top rail. Be careful, Cyrus called. I've got it. The board shifted beneath my boot. I slipped. Before I could fall, Cyrus grabbed me. One hand caught my arm. The other settled firmly around my waist. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. We stood there frozen. His face was close. Very close. You okay? His voice was quieter now. Yeah. Neither of us moved. Then he slowly released me. Good. I climbed down. My heart was racing. You really need to stop trying to fall. I forced a laugh. You really need to stop catching me. He smiled. Not happening. I looked away before he could see what that did to me. Later, we took a break beneath a large tree beside the field. Cyrus sat down first. I dropped beside him. We were both exhausted. He leaned back on his hands and looked toward the horizon. You know what? What? I forgot how much I love this place. I looked around. The field stretched beneath the afternoon sun. The wind moved slowly through the grass. Even the sounds of the farm seemed peaceful. It is beautiful. He smiled. My dad always said the farm teaches you patience. You need patience. He looked at me. Excuse me? You've been bossing me around all day. I've been keeping you from destroying the property. I've done nothing. You broke a rake. It was already broken. It was fine yesterday. I laughed. He pushed my shoulder. I pushed him back. For several seconds, we wrestled like we had when we were younger. Then we both stopped. We were sitting too close. His hand was still resting against my arm. His eyes met mine. Neither of us joked. Then Cyrus pulled away. Come on. I nodded. Yeah. That evening we ate dinner at the old farmhouse table. The kitchen was warm and quiet. Afterward we went outside. The sky was already dark. Stars covered everything. Cyrus sat on the porch steps. I sat beside him. For a while neither of us spoke. Then he said, This is nice. What is this? He gestured around us. The farm. The quiet. He looked at me. And having you here. I smiled. Me too. He leaned back against the wooden post. You know, I was worried you'd hate it. I do hate waking up early. But I don't hate being here. He smiled. Good. We stayed outside until the air became cold. Eventually, Cyrus's head dropped against my shoulder. I froze. He had fallen asleep. I looked down at him. For years, I'd wondered what it would feel like to have him that close. Now I knew. I could hear his breathing. Feel the warmth of his body. See the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes. I didn't move. I didn't want to wake him. After a while, he stirred. Did I fall asleep? Yeah. He sat up. Sorry. You don't have to apologize. He rubbed his eyes. I'm exhausted. I noticed. He smiled sleepily. Come on. We went inside. The hallway was dark. Before he reached his room, he stopped. You okay? Yeah. You seem quiet. Just tired. He studied me for a second. Then he smiled. Good night, Otis. Good night. I watched him disappear into his room. Then I stood there for several seconds. I had spent years trying to convince myself that I could handle loving him from a distance. Now I was sleeping in the same house, eating at the same table, working beside him, watching him fall asleep against my shoulder. And every day, it became harder to pretend my feelings weren't growing. The next few days passed quickly. We became a team. Cyrus even started joking that we worked better together than he did with anyone else. One afternoon, after we finished repairing a broken gate, he wiped his forehead and said, We're actually good at this. Yes. So you're finally admitting I'm useful? Don't get carried away. I laughed. Then he glanced at me. The best team I've ever had. The words were casual. He probably didn't think twice about them. I did. I carried them with me for the rest of the day. Because being his best friend was the closest thing I had to the life I wanted. Even if I knew it would never be enough. Then one evening over dinner, Cyrus casually changed everything. There's a restaurant in town. I looked up. What about it? I've been meaning to go. Okay. He took a sip of water. There's someone there I might know. I immediately understood. A woman? He looked at me. Yeah. I forced a smile. Nice. He frowned. You don't sound happy. I am. You sure? Of course. He smiled. Maybe I'll ask her out. My stomach tightened. But I nodded. Good for you. I looked down at my plate so he couldn't see my face. Cyrus didn't notice. Or maybe he did. I couldn't tell. But that night, lying alone in my room, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. I had known this would happen. I had always known. One day Cyrus would meet someone. He would fall in love. He would build a life. And I would stand somewhere beside that life pretending I wasn't breaking. I just hadn't expected it to hurt this much. And I certainly hadn't expected that the next time we went into town, I'd finally lose control. By the time Friday evening arrived, I had spent the entire day pretending I wasn't thinking about Cyrus's plans. I was terrible at pretending. Every time he mentioned going into town, my stomach tightened. Every time he checked his phone, I wondered whether she had messaged him. And every time I imagined him sitting across from another woman, smiling at her the way he smiled at me, Something inside my chest became heavier. I hated myself for it. Cyrus hadn't done anything wrong. He was straight. He had never promised me anything. He didn't even know how long I'd been carrying these feelings. So why did I feel like I was losing him? Around 6, Cyrus walked into the kitchen wearing a clean shirt and jeans. I looked up, then immediately looked away. You ready? Yeah. He leaned against the counter. You look nervous. I'm not nervous. You are. I've been working on a farm all week. I'm allowed to look tired. He laughed. You're avoiding my question. What question? Are you okay? I forced a smile. I'm fine. He stared at me. That lie again. I laughed. You really need to stop knowing me so well. Too late. He pushed away from the counter. Come on. The drive into town was mostly quiet. The farther we got from the farm, the more I wished we'd never left. I stared through the window while Cyrus hummed along to the radio. He looked happy, relaxed. I tried to be happy for him. I really did. When we arrived at the restaurant, I followed him inside. The place was warm and crowded, with soft lights hanging above the tables. We found a booth near the window. Cyrus sat opposite me. For the first few minutes, everything was normal. We talked about the farm. We laughed about one of the horses that had escaped earlier that week. Cyrus stole food from my plate. I complained. He laughed. And for a little while I forgot. Then she walked in. I saw her before Cyrus did. She was beautiful. Tall, confident, dressed elegantly, with the kind of effortless smile that made people look twice. When she noticed Cyrus, her entire face lit up. Cyrus. He turned. His expression changed. Emma? She walked over. They clearly knew each other. She smiled warmly. I haven't seen you in forever. Yeah. It's been a while. She glanced at me. Oh. Hi. Hi. Cyrus introduced us. This is Otis, my best friend. Best friend. The words hit harder than they should have. Emma smiled. It's nice to meet you. You too. She looked back at Cyrus. So you're back in town? For a few months. Really? Yeah. Helping my family with the farm. That sounds like a lot of work. It is. She laughed. You always hated being bored. Cyrus smiled. I still do. I watched them. Their conversation came easily. Too easily. She touched his arm when she laughed. Cyrus didn't move away. I looked down at my glass. I told myself to stop. Stop watching. Stop caring. Stop imagining things. But I couldn't. Emma eventually asked, Are you here with someone? Cyrus glanced toward me. Just Otis. The way he said my name made something ache. Emma smiled. That's sweet. I didn't know what she meant by that. Then she asked him the question I'd been dreading. So, are you seeing anyone? Cyrus laughed. No. I stared at the table. Good to know. I nearly choked. Emma smiled. I was wondering. Cyrus gave her a curious look. Why? Because I was thinking maybe we could catch up sometime. There it was. The moment I'd been dreading. She was interested. And Cyrus knew it. I looked at him. He wasn't saying no. Something inside me twisted. Emma pulled out her phone. Can I get your number? Cyrus reached for his phone. I don't know what happened after that. Maybe it was the weeks of working beside him. Maybe it was years of silence. Maybe it was simply that I'd reached the end of what I could tolerate. But before Cyrus could answer, I spoke. Can you not? Silence. Cyrus looked at me. Emma frowned. Excuse me? I heard my own heartbeat. I said, can you not? Otis, Cyrus said quietly. I ignored him. You're obviously making him uncomfortable. Emma stared at me. I was talking to him. I know. Then let him answer. Cyrus's expression changed. Otis. His voice was firmer this time. I finally looked at him. And I saw it. Confusion. Embarrassment. Maybe even disappointment. My anger vanished instantly. What was I doing? I looked back at Emma. I'm sorry. She crossed her arms. I think you should be. I stood. I'm going outside. Otis. But I was already walking away. I pushed through the restaurant doors and kept going. I didn't stop until I reached the side of the building. Then I leaned against the wall. My chest hurt. I covered my face with both hands. What have you done? I whispered it to myself. Tears came before I could stop them. I wiped them away angrily. I had promised myself I would never make Cyrus uncomfortable. Never force him to deal with feelings he hadn't asked for. Never let my jealousy become his problem. And now I'd done exactly that. The restaurant door opened behind me. I didn't turn around. Otis. Cyrus. I closed my eyes. Go back inside. No. I embarrassed you. You embarrassed both of us. His voice wasn't angry. That somehow made it worse. I turned around. He was standing a few feet away. You shouldn't have done that, he said. I know. Why did you? I couldn't answer. Otis. Just forget it. He stepped closer. No. I looked away. Please. Tell me the truth. I can't. You can. No, I can't. He stopped in front of me. You've been acting strange for days. I laughed bitterly. Maybe I'm tired. That isn't it. Then what is? You tell me. I stared at the ground. He waited. Finally, I whispered, because I couldn't watch her flirt with you. Silence. Cyrus didn't move. I looked up. His expression had changed. What? I swallowed. I couldn't watch it. Why? My eyes filled with tears again. Because. I took a shaky breath. Because I'm jealous. He stared at me. I laughed through my tears. God, this is pathetic. Otis. I didn't want you to know. Know what? I couldn't stop anymore. All of it. His eyes narrowed slightly. All of what? I closed my eyes. Then I said the words I'd spent years trying not to say. I'm in love with you. Everything went silent. Even the sounds from the street seemed to disappear. Cyrus stared at me. I shook my head. I've been in love with you for years. He opened his mouth. I continued before he could speak. I know you're straight. My voice broke. I know you only date women. I know you don't feel the same way, Otis. But I do. I wiped my face. I tried not to. I swear I tried. He looked stunned. I thought if I kept it to myself, it would disappear. I laughed bitterly. It didn't. Cyrus looked down. I kept talking because I was terrified that if I stopped, I'd never be able to say it again. You're my best friend. You're the most important person in my life. My voice became quieter. And I've been terrified that telling you would destroy everything. He looked at me. I didn't want to lose you. You should have told me. I was scared. Of me. Of losing you. He stepped closer. I could barely breathe. I watched that woman ask for your number, I whispered, and I realized I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. Tears rolled down my face. I'm sorry. I backed away. I shouldn't have said any of this. Otis. Please just let me go home. I turned. Then I stopped. Because there was something I'd spent years wanting to do. Something I'd never allowed myself to imagine. I turned back. Cyrus was still standing there. I stepped toward him. And before fear could stop me, I kissed him. It lasted only a second. Maybe two. Then I pulled away in horror. Oh God. I covered my mouth. I'm sorry. Cyrus didn't move. I shouldn't have done that. I stepped backward. I've ruined everything. I turned to leave. Then I felt his hand around my wrist. I stopped. Cyrus gently turned me back toward him. I looked into his eyes. He was still stunned. But he wasn't angry. Otis. I'm sorry. Stop. I couldn't help it. I know. He pulled me into his arms. I broke immediately. I buried my face against his shoulder and cried. His arms tightened around me. One hand moved slowly across my back. He didn't ask me to leave. He didn't push me away. He just held me. After a long moment, he whispered, "Don't apologize for loving me." I pulled back enough to look at him. His eyes were full of confusion. But there was something else too. Something I couldn't name yet. I don't know what this means, he admitted. I nodded. I understand. But I'm not angry. I wiped my eyes. You're not. No. He looked at me for a long moment. I'm just trying to understand. I gave him a broken smile. I've had years to understand it. He almost smiled. Then his expression became serious again. We should go home. I nodded. We walked back to the truck in silence. But this time the silence wasn't empty. Everything had changed. I had finally told Cyrus the truth. And even though I had no idea what would happen next, for the first time in my life I wasn't hiding from it. The drive back to the farm felt longer than the drive into town. Neither of us spoke. The radio was on, but neither of us was listening. I sat beside Cyrus with my hands folded tightly in my lap, staring through the windshield. I kept replaying the same moment in my mind. I had told him everything. Years of feelings I had carefully hidden. And then I had kissed him. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to go back in time and stop myself. More than anything, I wanted to know what Cyrus was thinking. but I was too afraid to ask. When we finally reached the farmhouse, Cyrus turned off the engine. The headlights disappeared. The sudden darkness felt almost suffocating. Neither of us got out. Finally, Cyrus said quietly, "Otis." I looked at him. "Yeah. Are you okay?" I almost laughed. "Do I look okay?" He looked at me for a moment. "No." I looked down. "I'm sorry." "You keep saying that. Because I keep giving you reasons to forgive me." He shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong by telling me how you feel. I kissed you." "I know. I shouldn't have." "Maybe." My chest tightened. Then he added, "But I'm not angry." I looked up. "Then what are you?" He took a slow breath. "Confused." I nodded. "That makes sense. I've spent my whole life thinking I knew exactly what I wanted. And now I'm not sure." I looked away. "You don't have to figure it out." He was quiet. Then he said, "I know." We finally got out of the truck. I walked toward the house. "Otis." I turned. Cyrus was still standing beside the truck. "Good night." I nodded. "Good night." I went to my room and closed the door. Then I sat on the edge of my bed. I stared at the floor for a long time. I'd imagined confessing to Cyrus hundreds of times. In every version of the fantasy, he smiled. He kissed me. He told me he'd secretly felt the same. Reality was nothing like that. Reality was silence, confusion, fear. And yet, he hadn't rejected me. That thought kept me awake. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. I almost didn't leave my room. I considered pretending to be sick. Maybe I could stay in bed all day. Maybe I could avoid Cyrus until things felt normal again. But nothing was going to be normal. I finally walked downstairs. Cyrus was already in the kitchen. He looked up. "Morning. Morning." He pointed toward the coffee. "I made yours." I stopped. He had always remembered how I liked it. "Thanks." I sat down. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Cyrus pushed a plate toward me. "Eat." "I will." "You say that every time." "I usually do." "You usually forget." I smiled faintly. He smiled too. For a few seconds it almost felt normal. Then I noticed him looking at me. "What?" "Nothing." "You're staring." "I know." I looked down. "Why?" He hesitated. "I'm thinking." "That sounds dangerous." He laughed. Then his smile faded. "About last night." My stomach tightened. "I don't want to pressure you," I said quickly. "You're not." "Because if you regret it." "I don't." I stopped. He looked at me. "I don't regret the kiss." I swallowed. "Then why do you look so worried?" "Because I kissed you back." My heart stopped. He continued. "And I don't know why." I stared at him. "You kissed me back?" "Yes." "I thought maybe I imagined it." "You didn't." He looked down at his coffee. "I haven't been able to stop thinking about it." Neither had I. I said nothing. Cyrus continued. "It's weird." "What is?" "I've kissed women before." I nodded slowly. "And I've never thought this much about a kiss." I didn't know what to say. He looked at me. "That scared me." "Because it was me?" "Because it was you." The words hit me harder than I expected. "Cyrus?" He shook his head. "Not in a bad way." He rubbed the back of his neck. "That's what I can't explain." I watched him carefully. I thought I knew myself. "You probably still do." "Do I?" He smiled sadly. "I don't know." There was no accusation in his voice. Only uncertainty. And somehow that made me want to protect him. "You don't have to decide anything today." He looked at me. "Why are you always so patient with me?" "Because you're worth waiting for." His expression softened. Neither of us said anything after that. We spent the morning working. It helped. The physical work gave us something else to focus on. At least it should have. But suddenly, every accidental touch felt different. When our hands met over a tool, I pulled away. When we walked side by side, I noticed how close we were. When Cyrus laughed, I felt the familiar ache in my chest. The difference was that now he knew. And I knew that he knew. By late afternoon, we had finished the day's work. I went outside and sat beneath the old tree near the field. The sunset painted everything gold. I heard footsteps behind me. "Cyrus." He sat beside me. For a while we watched the horizon. Then he spoke. "I don't want things to be awkward between us." "Neither do I." "But they are." "A little." He smiled. "A lot." I laughed. "Fair." He looked at me. "I've been thinking about something." "Again?" Very funny. I smiled. He became serious. When you kissed me? I waited. I wanted to pull away. My heart sank. Then he continued. But I didn't. I looked at him. I kissed you back. I nodded. I remember. I've been trying to figure out why. Did you? He looked across the fields. I think so. My heartbeat became faster. He turned toward me. I think I've been ignoring things. What things? He laughed quietly. Little things. Like how much I notice when you're not around. I stared at him. How quickly I know when something is wrong with you. He continued. How I always look for you when I walk into a room. My throat tightened. How I don't like seeing other people hurt you. He looked at my hand. Maybe I was so used to calling it friendship that I never stopped to ask what else it could be. I didn't speak. Cyrus slowly reached for my hand. His fingers touched mine. I let him take it. I don't know what this means for me, he said. You don't have to label it. I know. He turned his hand over and intertwined our fingers. But I know I want to do this again. I looked at him. Do what? He leaned closer. Kiss you. My breath caught. He gave me time to move away. I didn't. His lips met mine. The kiss was soft. Careful. Nothing like the desperate kiss outside the restaurant. This one felt deliberate. Chosen. When we separated, neither of us spoke. His forehead rested against mine. I think, he whispered, I'm starting to understand. I smiled. Understand what? Why losing you always scared me so much. I closed my eyes. What? He squeezed my hand. Because you're not just my best friend. My eyes filled with tears. I tried to hide them. Cyrus smiled. You're going to cry. I'm not. You are. Shut up. He laughed softly. Then he pulled me into his arms. I held him tightly. For years I dreamed about this. But dreams had never prepared me for how peaceful it could feel. No panic. No pretending. No fear. Just Cyrus. Holding me. That night we sat on the porch together. Our shoulders touched. Our hands remained intertwined. We talked about the future. Not big promises. Not labels. Just possibilities. And for the first time, Cyrus didn't talk about finding some woman someday. He talked about the farm. About where he wanted to travel. About fixing the old barn. And, without saying it directly, about having me beside him for those things. Before we went inside, he stopped me. Otis. Yeah. I don't know exactly what I am yet. I know. But I know how I feel about you. I smiled. How? He stepped closer. Like I don't want you to leave. Then he kissed me again. This time I didn't question it. Neither did he. And when I finally went to sleep that night, I realized something. The first kiss had terrified me because I thought it would end our friendship. The second kiss terrified me for an entirely different reason. Because now, I was beginning to believe Cyrus might actually love me. The morning after our second kiss felt strangely ordinary. That was what surprised me most. I woke before sunrise, pulled on my boots, and walked downstairs expecting to feel awkward. Instead, I found Cyrus in the kitchen making coffee. He looked over his shoulder. Morning. Morning. He smiled. Sleep well? Yeah. He studied me for a second. Good. I smiled back. There was no awkwardness. No hesitation. Just something new sitting quietly between us. Something neither of us had a name for yet. I poured myself coffee. Cyrus stood beside me. Our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved away. Then he reached over and brushed a little flour from my shirt. You're messy. You're criticizing me before breakfast? I'm concerned about your reputation. What reputation? Terrible. I laughed. He smiled. Then, almost casually, he leaned over and kissed my forehead. I froze. He pulled away. What? Nothing. You look shocked. I am. Why? You kissed me. He shrugged. I'm allowed to. That sentence stayed with me all morning. I'm allowed to. For years, I'd convinced myself that wanting affection from Cyrus was something wrong. Something I had to hide. Now he was the one reaching for me. And I didn't know how to handle how good it felt. We spent the morning working near the barn. Cyrus was repairing a piece of equipment while I sorted supplies. Every few minutes he glanced toward me. Once I caught him staring. What? Nothing. You're doing that again. Doing what? Looking at me. He smiled. Can't help it. My heart stumbled. Cyrus. What? You're making this very difficult. He laughed. I'm just looking. Exactly. He walked over. I like looking at you. I stared at him. You've changed. Maybe. He stood close enough that I could feel the warmth from him. Or maybe I'm finally being honest. I didn't know what to say, so I smiled. He smiled back. Then he reached for my hand. Just for a moment. Then he let go and returned to his work. That was how our relationship began to change. Not with some dramatic declaration. Not overnight. But through hundreds of little moments. Cyrus started touching me more. A hand on my shoulder. A quick hug from behind while I was making breakfast. His fingers brushing mine when we sat together. A kiss before heading outside. A kiss before bed. Sometimes he'd pull me close while we watched the sunset. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch beneath the same blanket. Nothing about it felt forced. It felt natural. Almost frighteningly natural. One evening we were sitting outside after a long day. The sky was turning dark. I was exhausted. I leaned against the back of the chair and closed my eyes. A few minutes later, I felt something warm against my shoulder. Cyrus. He had moved closer. You tired? Very. Me too. He rested his head against my shoulder. I smiled. You realize you've become very clingy. Maybe I like being close to you. I turned my head slightly. You do. He looked at me. Yes. That simple answer made my chest ache. I lifted my arm. He moved closer, resting against me. We stayed like that for a long time. Then Cyrus spoke. You know what I keep thinking about? What? That night at the restaurant. I sighed. I was hoping you'd forget that. I don't think I can. Why? He looked at me. Because that's when everything finally became clear. I waited. He continued. I saw how hurt you were. I was a mess. You were. Thanks. He smiled. But I realized something. What? I didn't want to lose you. You already knew that. I knew I didn't want to lose my best friend. He hesitated. Now I'm not sure that's the whole truth. I looked at him. He took my hand. You spent years being afraid I'd leave you. I was. I know. His thumb moved slowly over my knuckles. But I'm not going anywhere. I swallowed. You promise? He looked directly into my eyes. I promise. That night we stayed inside because the weather had turned cold. We sat together on the couch. Cyrus put a blanket over both of us. I rested against him. He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. After a while I asked, Are you happy? He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, More than I expected. Because of the farm? He looked at me. Because of you. I smiled. That's dangerous. Why? Because I'll start believing you. Good. He leaned closer. You should. He kissed me. When we pulled apart, I rested my forehead against his. I still can't believe this is real. Me neither. He smiled. Maybe we should stop questioning it. Maybe. His hand slipped into mine. We stayed there until we fell asleep. The next few weeks made the farm feel different. It was still hard work. Still early mornings. Still muddy boots and long afternoons. But every task felt lighter because I wasn't carrying my feelings alone anymore. One afternoon I was trying to fix a stubborn latch when Cyrus came up behind me. Need help? I've got it. You've been saying that for 10 minutes. I almost have it. He laughed. Then he reached around me. His hands covered mine. Like this. I felt his chest against my back. I stopped moving. He noticed. Sorry. Don't. He smiled. Okay. Together we fixed the latch. When he stepped away I turned toward him. That was unfair. What? You knew exactly what you were doing. He laughed. Maybe. I shook my head. You're impossible. You still like me. Unfortunately. He leaned forward and kissed my cheek. Good. That evening we walked toward the far field. The sun was low. Cyrus took my hand. There's something I need to tell you. My heart immediately raced. What? He stopped. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Soft. Nervous. Certain. I think I fell in love with you before I even realized I was falling. I couldn't speak. Cyrus continued. I don't know exactly when it happened. He smiled faintly. Maybe it happened years ago. I felt tears in my eyes. Cyrus. He stepped closer. I kept calling it friendship because that's what I'd always called it. He took both my hands. But I think friendship was only the beginning. A tear slipped down my cheek. He gently wiped it away. I love you, Otis. I laughed softly through my tears. You really mean that? Yes. He pulled me into his arms. I hugged him tightly. For years I had imagined what it would feel like to hear those words. No dream could have prepared me for the reality. I whispered against his shoulder, "I love you too." He held me tighter. And for a long time we simply stood there. No fear. No questions. No pretending. Just us. When we finally returned to the farmhouse, Cyrus stopped me at the door. "What?" He smiled. "Nothing. You're staring again." "I know." Then he kissed me. Slowly. Tenderly. Like he had all the time in the world. When he pulled away, he kept one hand in mine. "Come on." "Where?" "Inside." "For what?" He smiled. "Dinner." I laughed. "You made me think something romantic was about to happen." "It is." "What?" "You're eating the dessert." "That isn't romantic." "It is when I give you the bigger piece." I laughed so hard that he started laughing too. And that was the strange beauty of falling in love with Cyrus. It wasn't only the kisses. It wasn't only the moments when he held me close. It was the laughter, the teasing, the comfortable silence, the way we could still be best friends even after becoming something more. That night, we lay beside each other talking until the conversation slowly faded. Cyrus reached across the space between us. I took his hand. "Otis." "Yeah. Are you happy?" I smiled in the darkness. For the first time in a long time. He squeezed my fingers. "Good." He moved closer. I rested against him. His arm wrapped around me. And as I listened to his breathing become slower, I realized something. I'd spent years believing that if I ever told Cyrus the truth, I'd lose my best friend. Instead, the truth had given me something I had never dared to ask for. My best friend. My love. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. I was looking forward to it. The storm came just after sunset. One minute, the sky above the farm was clear enough to see the first stars. The next, dark clouds rolled over the fields, swallowing the last traces of daylight. I was standing near the kitchen window when lightning flashed across the horizon. Cyrus looked up from the table. "That doesn't look good." I smiled. "You're the farm expert." "Exactly. So tell me." He glanced outside again. "It's going to be a bad one." Almost as if the sky had been waiting for him to say it, thunder shook the windows. A few seconds later, the lights flickered. Then everything went dark. I laughed. "Great." Cyrus stood. "I'll get the candles." "You knew where they were?" "My family has had this problem for years." He disappeared into the hallway. A moment later, he returned with a box of candles and a lighter. Soon, small flames filled the kitchen with soft, golden light. The storm grew louder. Rain hammered against the roof. Wind pushed against the windows. Outside, the fields disappeared into darkness. Inside, it was just the two of us. Cyrus sat across from me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. "Kind of romantic." I raised an eyebrow. "You're enjoying this?" "Maybe." "You're strange." "You already knew that." I laughed. He reached across the table. His hand found mine. The gesture was simple. Familiar. But something about tonight made it feel different. Maybe it was the storm. Maybe it was the darkness. Maybe it was knowing how far we'd come. A few months earlier, I had been terrified of being honest with him. Now I was sitting across from him with my hand in his. No secrets. No pretending. Cyrus looked down at our fingers. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Were you really that scared to tell me?" I hesitated. "Yes." "Why?" I looked toward the window. "Because you were the most important person in my life." "I still am." "I know." I swallowed. "But when you've loved someone for years and you know they don't feel the same way." I gave a small laugh. "You start convincing yourself that silence is safer." Cyrus listened. "So every time I watched you date someone, I smiled." He squeezed my hand. "Even when it hurt. Especially then." "Otis. I didn't want you to feel guilty." His eyes softened. "I didn't know." "I know. I wish I'd known." I smiled sadly. "I was good at hiding it." "You were. Too good." He looked down. Then he said something that surprised me. "You scared me too." I frowned. "Me?" He nodded. "Not because you told me you loved me." "Then why?" He took a slow breath. "Because after that night, I realized how much of my life was built around you." I stayed quiet. "I thought about every time I'd called you." He smiled. "Every time I wanted to tell you something first." His fingers tightened around mine. "Every time something happened and you were the person I wanted beside me." He looked directly at me. "I had always called that friendship." I waited. "But then you kissed me." The memory made my heart race. And suddenly I had to look at everything differently. I whispered, "Was that frightening?" "Yes." He smiled faintly. But not because it felt wrong. My eyes met his. It felt right. The room seemed to grow quieter. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, Cyrus moved closer. I didn't know what that meant. "You didn't have to." "I know." He lifted my hand and pressed a gentle kiss against my knuckles. But I needed to figure it out. "And did you?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Yes." My heart began beating faster. "What did you figure out?" "That you became my home before I even realized I was looking for one." I couldn't speak. He smiled. "I don't care what label makes sense to everyone else." He reached up and touched my cheek. "I know what I feel." My eyes filled with tears. "What do you feel?" He answered without hesitation. "Love." I closed my eyes. For a moment I couldn't do anything but breathe. Then I leaned forward and wrapped my arms around him. He held me tightly. I felt his hand move slowly across my back. I whispered, "I thought loving you would mean losing you." His voice came quietly beside my ear. "You almost lost me by never telling me." I pulled back. He looked at me. "But you're not losing me now." I smiled through tears. "Promise." "Promise." He kissed my forehead, then my cheek. Then he paused. His eyes met mine. I understood what he was asking without words. I leaned closer. He kissed me. The kiss was slow and warm, filled with everything we'd been too afraid to say. There was no desperation this time. No uncertainty. Just the quiet realization that we had finally stopped running from what we felt. When we separated, Cyrus kept his forehead against mine. "I could get used to this." I smiled. "You already have." He laughed. "Probably." The electricity still hadn't returned. So we moved to the couch with the candles nearby. The storm continued outside. We pulled a blanket over ourselves. Cyrus wrapped an arm around me. I settled against him. For a while we simply listened to the rain. Then he said, "Do you remember our first year of college?" I laughed. "When you nearly got us kicked out of the library? That wasn't my fault. You were the one who started singing. I was trying to cheer you up. You sang terribly." He laughed. "You still listened." "Unfortunately." He squeezed me. We talked for hours. About college. About our families. About all the moments we'd shared without realizing how important they were. At some point the storm became quieter. The candles burned lower. I could feel sleep taking over. Cyrus noticed. "You're tired?" "A little." "Come on." We walked upstairs. At my bedroom door I hesitated. "Good night." Cyrus looked at me. "Why are you saying good night like you're leaving?" I thought. He smiled. "Stay." My heart skipped. "You sure?" "Yes." He opened his bedroom door. "Come on." I followed him inside. We lay beside each other beneath the blankets. There was still a little distance between us. Not because we wanted it. Because neither of us knew how much closeness was too much. Then Cyrus reached across the bed. His fingers found mine. "Come here." I moved closer. He wrapped an arm around me. I rested my head against his chest. His heartbeat was calm, steady, safe. I closed my eyes. "This feels strange." "How?" "I spent years imagining this." He laughed softly. "And? The real thing is better." He kissed the top of my head. "Good." I smiled. A few minutes later he whispered, "Otis." "Yeah." "I love you." I opened my eyes. "Say it again." He smiled. "I love you." I hugged him tightly. "I love you too." The storm had almost disappeared by then. Rain still tapped softly against the windows. Cyrus's breathing gradually became slower. I stayed awake a little longer. I listened to the man I had loved in silence for years breathing beside me. And for the first time, I wasn't imagining a future that could never happen. I was living it. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains. I woke slowly. For a moment, I didn't understand where I was. Then I felt Cyrus's arm around me. He was still asleep. I smiled. He opened one eye. "You're staring again." "I can't help it." He smiled sleepily. "Morning." "Morning." He pulled me closer. "You slept okay?" "Better than okay." "Same." I rested my head against him. Neither of us moved. Outside, the storm had left the fields shining with rain. Everything looked fresh. Clean. No. And somehow so did we. Cyrus kissed my forehead. "Ready?" "For what?" He smiled. "Whatever comes next." I took his hand. Together? He squeezed it. Together. And that was the night we stopped running. Not from the storm. Not from the uncertainty. Not from what other people might think. From ourselves. We finally stopped pretending our love needed permission to exist. And when I looked at Cyrus that morning, I knew there was only one thing I was certain of. I didn't just love my best friend. I had found the person I wanted to build my life with. The weeks after the storm felt different. Not because the farm had changed. Not because our routine had changed. But because we had. Cyrus and I no longer danced around the truth. We didn't have to pretend our hands only touched by accident. We didn't have to hide our smiles when we caught each other staring. And I didn't have to wake up every morning wondering whether the man beside me would still want me there. He did. Some mornings, Cyrus would wake before me and make coffee. Other mornings, I'd wake first and find him still asleep. Sometimes we'd argue over who had to feed the animals. Sometimes we'd spend half the evening sitting on the porch, talking about absolutely nothing. It was ordinary. And somehow, ordinary had become my favorite thing in the world. One morning I came downstairs and found Cyrus standing at the stove. He turned when he heard me. "Morning. Morning." He smiled. "You're late." I looked at the clock. "It's 6. Exactly. That's not late. On this farm it is." I walked toward him. "You're becoming way too serious about this farmer thing." He laughed. "You're becoming way too comfortable here." I stopped beside him. "Maybe because I like it." He looked at me. "You like the farm?" I smiled. "I like who I share it with." For a moment he just stared at me. Then he stepped closer and kissed my forehead. I liked that answer. We ate breakfast together. Afterward, we spent the morning working near the barn. The weather was perfect. Cool air. Clear sky. Sunlight stretching across the fields. I was repairing a section of fencing when I heard Cyrus behind me. "You missed a board." I looked over my shoulder. "I did not." "You did. You're lying." He came closer. "Move." I stepped aside. He inspected the fence. Then he looked at me. "You were right." I smiled. "I know." He shook his head. "You're getting arrogant." "You taught me." He laughed. Then he leaned in and kissed my cheek. I smiled. "That's unfair." "What?" "You can't just distract me." "Seems to be working." I tried not to laugh. We worked until noon. Later that afternoon we sat beneath the old tree overlooking the fields. It had become our place. The same place where we'd spent countless afternoons talking before either of us knew what we were becoming. Cyrus stretched out beside me. I was thinking about something. That usually means trouble. He laughed. "Maybe." He turned toward me. "I don't want this to end." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "The farm." I looked around. His family would eventually take everything back over. Our time here had never been permanent. But I knew what he was really asking. "What happens when your family doesn't need you anymore?" He looked at me. "Do you go home?" My chest tightened. "I don't know." He was quiet. Then he said, "I don't want you to." I looked at him. "You want me to stay?" "I want us to figure out what comes next." I smiled. "Together?" "Together." He reached for my hand. Our fingers intertwined. We could get our own place. I laughed. "You're planning our future now?" He smiled. "Apparently." "What happened to the guy who couldn't even keep a cactus alive?" He laughed. "That guy fell in love." I stared at him. He smiled. "With you." I leaned closer and rested my head against his shoulder. For a while neither of us spoke. Then I said quietly, "Do you ever regret it?" "Regret what?" "That night." He knew exactly what I meant. He looked toward the horizon. Then back at me. "No. Not even a little?" "Never." I smiled. "Not even yelling at that woman?" He laughed. "Okay. Maybe I regret letting you scare her." I pushed his shoulder. "You're terrible." "I know." He took my hand again. "But I don't regret the kiss." My smile faded. "You don't?" "No." He turned toward me. "That's the moment everything changed." "For me too." He smiled. I was so sure I knew exactly who I was. "You didn't?" "Maybe I did." He thought for a moment. "Maybe I just didn't understand that love doesn't always arrive in the shape you expect." I felt tears building in my eyes. He noticed. "You're doing it again." "Doing what?" "Crying." "I'm not." "You are." I laughed and wiped my eyes. He gently touched my cheek. "I'm serious, Otis." "About what?" "You don't have to be afraid anymore." I looked at him. I'm not. You still are. I sighed. Sometimes. He nodded. Then I'll keep reminding you. Of what? That I'm here. He kissed my forehead. I'm here. Then my cheek. I'm staying. Then my lips. And I love you. I closed my eyes. I love you too. That evening we walked back to the farmhouse together. We didn't rush. The sun was beginning to disappear behind the fields. Cyrus held my hand the entire way. When we reached the porch, he stopped. Wait. What? He looked at me. There's something I want to say. I smiled. That sounds serious. It is. He took both my hands. When I first asked you to come here, I thought I was asking my best friend for help. I listened. I thought we'd spend a few months working, complain about the farm, make fun of each other, and then go back to our normal lives. He smiled. But you changed everything. I smiled back. You changed too. I know. He squeezed my hands. You made me understand that sometimes the person standing beside you is the person you've been searching for without even realizing it. My eyes filled again. Cyrus. He pulled me closer. You were never just my friend. I looked at him. You just took me a long time to understand it. He kissed me. Slowly. Tenderly. I wrapped my arms around him. When we finally separated, he kept his forehead against mine. What? He smiled. Nothing. You're staring. I like looking at you. You say that a lot now. Because it's true. I laughed. Come on. We went inside. That night we had dinner together. Afterward we sat on the porch beneath the stars. The farm was quiet. The air was cool. Cyrus leaned against me. I rested my head against his. There was something peaceful about the silence. A kind of peace I had spent years thinking I could never have. Eventually Cyrus spoke. You know what I want? What? To wake up beside you even after all of this is over. I turned toward him. He smiled. I don't want this to just be the farm story. The farm story? Yeah. He laughed. I want it to be the beginning. I smiled. Then it is. He held my hand. We'll figure out the rest. Together. Together. Months later, the farm was busy again. Cyrus's family had returned. Life had started moving forward. But something had remained exactly the same. Cyrus still woke early. I still complained. He still stole food from my plate. I still teased him about his terrible singing. He still kissed me whenever he thought I needed reminding that I was loved. And the farmhouse was still filled with the sounds of our laughter. One morning, I stood outside with a cup of coffee and watched him working near the barn. He looked up. Our eyes met. He smiled. Then he started walking toward me. I smiled back. You're staring again? He said when he reached me. You noticed. I always notice. He held out his hand. I took it. We started walking toward the fields together. The sun was rising. The grass was wet with morning dew. The world seemed impossibly quiet. And I thought about the person I had been before all of this. The man who had loved his best friend silently. The man who had been terrified that one confession would destroy everything. The man who had believed that sometimes love had to remain hidden to survive. I wished I could go back and tell him something. Tell him that honesty wasn't always the ending. Sometimes it was the beginning. Sometimes the person you were afraid to lose was the person who would choose to stay. Sometimes a friendship didn't disappear when love entered it. Sometimes it became something stronger. I looked at Cyrus. He squeezed my hand. You thinking too much? Always. He laughed. Come on. Where? Anywhere. I smiled. With you. He looked at me like the answer was obvious. Always. And just like that, we walked into the morning together. My best friend. My first love. My home. Cyrus. The man I had once been terrified to love. And the man I would spend the rest of my life loving. Because I had gone to that farm thinking I was there to help my straight best friend. I had no idea that I was walking into the place where I would finally find the courage to tell him the truth. And I certainly never imagined that the man who had always called himself straight would eventually take my hand, look into my eyes and choose me. But he did. And somehow, after everything we'd been through, the simplest truth was still the most beautiful one. I went there to help my best friend. But then he fell in love with me.